There's calls for authorities to poison deer. Angela Naismith says she's had deer roaming on her Eastbourne property for years, but says the problem is worse than ever before.
We get the deer entering the lower part of the garden and grazing on the plants down there and leaving their muddy footprints. But this year they've been right up almost onto the deck, and on one or two occasions I think they've even walked across the deck. But about 2 weeks ago I actually took a picture of them, albeit a very hazy one because it was dark. It was about 11 o'clock at night. I went out, I looked out through the window and I could see 6 of them just on the edge of our deck, and I took a picture and then I ran out onto the deck and shouted abuse at them, and they ran away. But initially they just stood and looked at me as much as to say, well, what do you think you're doing? You know, so I thought, right, no, I'll give them a touch of me. So I shouted and yelled and off they went.
Good on you, Angela.
But that's happened, it's happened several times now.
Hey, Angela, could you describe for us, I mean, do you keep a nice garden? What's your garden like? And what have they done to it?
We have a large garden. The top half of it is grass. It's not what I would call a lawn because it slopes and is not very even, but it's bounded by flower beds, fish pond, and then goes steeply down to the road in Lowry Bay.
And what sort of plants have they taken a fancy to lately?
Well, they came round on the side garden and they walked along the top of the wall, which would have been about 3 meters from the windows, and they ate all the freesias from the top of the part of the garden there. Another part of the garden, they've eaten the daffodils. They've stomped through the heather bed and smashed a lot of that, and it looks like they've even slept amongst the heather bed. They've left deep ruts where their hooves go down into the mud because it is now muddy. Underneath the plum tree, it's quite a quagmire.
So, Angela, what do you think the solution is here? What do we do with the deer?
Well, there has to be something. They have to do something and cull them. I wouldn't like to be around when they actually do it, and I wouldn't want any of the meat unless I had it on the butcher's slab. But I couldn't do anything about it myself. I would find it too cruel. But they are quite definitely a pest. They've also been known to be out on the road by other neighbours. So, yes, they are a pest.
Now, that's Angela Naismith. We spoke to one of her neighbours, Andrew Alcorn, who says 1080 is designed to turn off deer, but he agrees that they're a pest and they should be treated just like possums, rats and stoats. He says his section is being carved up by hoof prints from wild deer making themselves at home.
It's just a complete mud bath. You know what it's like on a farm in winter when the cattle pugging up the ground. Well, it's like that, and no grass left. It's all just a pile of mud and deep, deep hoof prints through the lawn. And, yeah, you know, selected trees pretty much stripped, and they come right up, you know, close to the deck. If I disturb them in the night, they'll run off in different directions, making a big noise. Don't often see them, but you hear them, and the evidence is very graphic.
Right. So we've had fairly successful eradication programs with possums, rats, stoats, those sort of animals. Why the problem and why the big numbers of deer at the moment, particularly in this area?
Every year the council has a cull, and I understand these are done by hunters, but it's just not effective. I mean, they take out a few, and every now and then you come across a dead deer carcass, minus a leg or a head or whatever. But the numbers just keep increasing, and I think hunting will bring down the numbers a little, but it clearly doesn't get rid of them. And the deer have figured out that they can get down to this little ridge where we live, and there's a sort of protected zone where they know they're pretty safe. We can't discharge firearms in a built-up area, so they're just running rampant, and there are paths everywhere that they've made, and erosion, and yeah.
Okay.
You know.
What do we need to do here, Andrew? I mean, the council does, as you say, organise culls every now and then. It sounds like they've really got to step it up. Are you calling for them to take greater action here?
I really think that the only way that they're going to get rid of them and get on top of the problem is with poisoning. There's some weird thing that I think we should be having as part of the 1080 debate about why 1080 has got deer repellent put in it so that the deer don't eat it. As far as I can see all up and down the country, what we're doing is we're preserving the deer population just so that the hunters can, exercise their blood sport, for their own entertainment.
And you're saying that's spilling into suburbia now, that we've got deer, obviously, places they can be hunted, but now they're causing an impact around people's homes.
Absolutely, yeah. Yep. And,
so,
why are we protecting the hunters so they can just, enjoy it, and yet the deer are making a huge mess of the bush and people's suburban gardens.
Do you think there's something around the attitude towards deer because they're a larger animal, they're a fairly beautiful, attractive, picturesque kind of beast? Do you think there's a concern there that we don't put them in the same category as other smaller, uglier animals that might also be pests, and therefore we're letting their population proliferate?
Yes, I'm sure that's part of it. But, on the other side of it is all the birds who suffer because the bush is suffering, and they're pretty beautiful animals too.
That's Andrew Alcorn there. Now, the Greater Wellington Regional Council has got in touch. They said there has been a rise in the number of deer it's finding, but that says in regional parks, hasn't really spoken about suburbia. The council says the people that benefit from it should be paying for it, so we might hear more about that. And it says deer numbers are being managed through recreational hunting permits balloted during April and May, and professional hunters as well. So it seems that they're not willing to comply on the 1080 drop. So we might hear more about this.